Hello, everyone. My name is Arai Beckman with ConsciousVitality.com. We've got Joel Goldzer, associate producer here with Conscious Vitality. And today we are very happy to have David Mahoney with us. He is an individual that is very much tied into a project that many of you here with our audience have already seen involving potentially a new King of England. Today, we are going to dive further into the subject. We're going to ask Dave about how he first came aware of the project, how he first met Gregory Hallett, and the evidence and proof that he's seen that's helped him understand why he thinks this could actually really be happening right now. So, Dave, good morning. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning, guys. Thank you very much. This should be quite interesting. It's actually good evening for me, but that's
good
all
evening
right.
for you.
I've cheated the lights. It looks like it's daytime. Do you like that?
You're doing great. You're doing great.
No, it's still daylight. It's daylight here till 10 o'clock. So, and I haven't had a drink yet, so it should be quite good.
In the UK, that's quite rare at that time already of the day. So we appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm in southern Spain actually. I live right down from my terrace. I can see Gibraltar and North Africa. I can see Morocco from here. It's a fantastic part of the world. Yeah. Every day I've been here 25 years, and you know, every time I see it, it still makes me go, "Wow, man! How cool is that?" You know, seeing a different continent from your terrace. It's amazing.
That is amazing. Yeah, Africa is an incredible thing. Well, so Joel and I have a lot of questions prepared for you, David. We are very interested and intrigued. The way that we originally presented Gregory and the King John III, documentary that you guys filmed to our audience initially was, we just encouraged them to have an open mind. We told them we have no evidence, we have no understanding as to how this can be validated. We did not tell them this is happening. We said rather, hey, this could be happening. Let's try and keep an open mind as we explore, as we go deeper down the rabbit hole. And today, the first thing I wanted to ask you is, how did you first come about learning about Greg and getting involved in helping to film this documentary and the subsequent projects you've had?
It's a really weird story, actually. I mean, it's weird and it isn't weird. During the lockdown, we had a 3-month lockdown from March through to sort of June here in Spain. And one of my passions is archaeology. So I got bored with Netflix and all the other stuff. So I was just watching some stuff on Netflix, and there was a program came on about another potential line of the king from the Plantagenet, who it's presented by a famous TV actor from the UK. It was a BBC program, more or less. And he followed this guy called, what was his name? I think it was Nicholas. I can't remember. Anyway, it was an English lord that gave up his titles, and he moved to Australia in the 60s, and he became a rice engineer. He was trying to develop a special breed of rice that could grow in the desert. So this guy, well-known actor, Tony Robinson, tracked this guy down in Australia and said, we've actually done a lineage chart to show you that you are the rightful king, or you could be the rightful king. But it was very interesting. I enjoyed watching it, and the show ended. And then after that, an interview came on with Joseph Gregory Hallett. It just came on by itself, you know. So I thought, what's this? I'd never heard of him before. And I started watching it. And honestly, guys, something just clicked inside me. I just went, whoa. Something just kind of, I remember it was an hour and 10 minutes or something, and it just took over. I watched the whole hour and 10 minutes. And then I called my friend Charlie Ward has an amazing show now where we're all kind of in southern Spain together. So I said, Charlie, have you seen this interview where this guy says he's got a right to the throne? He said, yes, I've just finished watching it. And I don't know how he'd seen it. He'd seen the same program. So then we rang another friend, and we got Greg on a Zoom call about 2 days later. And the Zoom call was going very well, but Charlie's phone went off when Greg said, Winston Churchill is the real father of Queen Elizabeth II. And his phone went, and he went down like this. And I went, what are you doing, Charlie? You didn't ask that question. So then I got on the next Zoom call. And one time when I was in Mexico, I read a really great, big, thick book about the royal family. I didn't really have much interest. I am from the UK. We've grown up with it, you know, with some people are fanatics, some people don't take much notice. I'm kind of somewhere in between. So I regained a lot of knowledge from that book. So I said, get me on. I want to ask him some questions. and it went very well. And something inside me just said, you know, there's a little voice saying, there's something in this. And I asked Greg that Zoom call, I said, so what's next, Greg? And he said, well, it'd be really nice to get a really good, maybe interview or a professional interview team here so I can talk to you. I said, Greg, I'll be there in a week. So I smuggled my team out, myself, Dave Vickers, and Lee. Yeah, we smuggled ourselves out of Spain because we're all on lockdown.
Yeah.
I managed to get to the UK, get the series done, the first 3 episodes, and get back. And now here we are now on just about to, well, episode 4 is coming out, which is the trip to Portugal. So, yeah, it was just an instinctive feeling I had that was something in this story that I had to do it, you know? That's why.
What clicked for you? You know, like when you're hearing a story, was it the evidence? Was it like the type of person, the way he was coming off as genuine, or, you know?
It was, yeah, he just came off genuine and exceptionally knowledgeable. I've had a few people ask me that, Joel. And, you know, over the years, I've met a lot of crazy people. I've done a lot of traveling, and I've met, you know, I call them cosmic children. You know, they're either so far out there that they've got one foot in crazy town, or, you know, they've just smoked one joint too many somewhere, you know, in Southeast Asia. But this guy, he just had all the answers, and he was totally normal. You can have a laugh with him. His humor's there. And then he went straight into really deep historical, biblical events and facts. And I just thought, I've never seen anything like that before. He's just so balanced. He can go, whoa, let's get really down, as you say, the rabbit hole. And then he's back up saying, let's go for beer. So it was just an instinctive feeling. I'd say, I always say a little voice inside me, you know. So here we are, you know, 5 months later.
Yeah.
Well, after you guys have had your episodes, right, that's where you were really able to probably dive deeper into it, both in front of the camera and probably behind the scenes.
Yeah.
So, you know, the basic synopsis for everyone watching is that Gregory Hallett has presented documentation, right?
Yeah, well, there's actually, Ira, there's 2 sides to this. We have a biblical prophecy and we have a bloodline connection. So both of them are fascinating. And I don't know which one you'd like to talk. You want to talk about both of them?
Both of them. Yeah. So what I'd love our audience to understand is if they're looking at this for the first time, I told Joel when I first watched Greg, I said, you know what? Could very well be true. The guy could just be, obviously the user's perspective for the first time is he could just be making it all up for attention.
Yeah, absolutely. It's
right?
certainly possible. But,
totally. So,
you know, well, there's one thing about that. He actually doesn't really like the attention. When you're out and about with him, he's normal. And, you know, he'll sit there and he's not loud and boisterous and look at me. He wears very normal clothes. You know, he blends in. He's not particularly small. He's not particularly tall. But he's told me some very good how to, you know, because I've asked him the same questions. And the first night we got there, Greg and myself sat up till, actually, you know, we didn't even say hello. We just had a hug. It was weird. We didn't shake hands like, nice to meet you, sir. It was a hug when I saw him. Felt very natural. But we sat up till 3 a.m. saying, okay, tomorrow we're going to start filming. I need to get some background, like yourselves, putting the story together to know where I'm going with it. So I started asking these deep questions. And he said to me, okay, so think about it like this. Back in the 11th century, the Vatican they said, okay, who owns the world? And the answer, of course, is, well, God owns the world. Okay, so God owns the world. Who is God's representative on the planet, in this world? Well, of course, you are, the Vatican. So the Vatican then said, okay, so while God's not here, or Jesus is not here, we'll take care of the whole world for God. And of course, they stole everything. They started getting all the money, all the property, putting it all together. So they had to put a description of, okay, how do we know when Jesus is coming back? Or, you know, the next savior? Because the other thing that people get mixed up with is Christ. The word Christ is not a name. It's a title. It's like Lord or Lady. Yeah? So the title Christ. So they said, when the next title holder Christ comes back, we'll give him back the world because he is now the keeper of the world for God. So they made this crazy description. and it made it absolutely super impossible for anybody to fulfill.
This is in the Book of Revelations, right?
Yeah, it's in the Book of Revelations, exactly. So there was lots of passages and hints about what he's going to do, from the color of his skin to the shape of his feet, to the fact that he's never had a bone broken in his body. And he has to be born in between the mountain and Bethlehem, which is exactly where Jesus was. So the biblical prophecies in the Book of Revelations fit Greg. I mean, it's ridiculous. You know, he's never broken any bones. He was born in a place between Bethlehem, which is a town in New Zealand, and the mountain. There was a place called the Mount. Then there was a story about living near the substance of life. And he lived over a bakery when he was a kid at some stage. So there's all these tiny little things. And then when we got into the next part about the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, I mean, that's a great story too. So the biblical predictions about him are there. And, you know, you can interpret them in many different ways. It's a little bit like Nostradamus when you're trying to interpret quantrums. But there is something there, you know, because it was written in French and everything. And the Bible, he said, the Bible is a book of predictions wrapped around in a religion that's been weaponized by the Catholic Church or the Vatican to keep people living in fear. So that's the whole biblical side. And he showed me several things when I was with him in England. And then you've got the bloodline side, which is another fascinating one, because it all goes back to 2 very important points in history, in British royal history. And the first one was the wife of Henry VIII, who was called Anne Boleyn. Now, Anne Boleyn, Henry VIII wanted to get divorced because he liked women. He liked, you know, he's a player, as you'd say in America. But he was restricted from getting divorced because his religion restricted him. He was Catholic. So he said, no, I want to get rid of this one. I want to get another one. The Catholic Church said no. He said, you know what, stuff you. I'm the King of England. I can do whatever I want. So he did a change of religion to Protestant basis, and he got rid of Anne Boleyn. So Anne Boleyn was taken to the Tower. She was ready to be executed. But the execution was faked by doing a very high platform, 9 in the morning when the sun was in everybody's eyes. He had very big guards on the front. They switched it. They put her hair up very high in those great big fluffy white collars he used to do. So they basically cut off all her hair, threw a blooded swede, like a large pumpkin sort of vegetable called a turnip. And then they got a fake body, and they smuggled Anne Boleyn out of the Tower, which was quite common at the time. It was a business, smuggling VIPs. But she was pregnant. And because she'd had the coronation, and she was officially the queen, she gave birth to a little girl, and the grandson of that girl was Greg's ancestor. And that man was called Sir Walter Raleigh, who was a very, very famous, important person in British history. He defeated the Spanish Armada with Queen Elizabeth I, and that's the direct bloodline from that side. So there's that. And then there's the Queen Victoria connection, which is all about where the White Rabbit paper came from, which she has a letter, because Queen Victoria had a child when she was pregnant at 14, got married, had the child at 15, which wasn't uncommon then, in 1850. And she smuggled the child out of the United Kingdom, and the child was raised in Portugal. It was called Marcos Alfonso. And with that child, that was really the first heir of the throne. But she was forced to take another husband, Albert, and she had, I think, 7 children with him. But the first one was raised in Portugal, and this is the whole Portuguese descendant. And that child came from the Sangreal bloodline, which is, as they say, is the direct bloodline of Jesus and Mary. So you've got a biblical predictions, which he's fulfilled, and he's got the bloodline predictions, which comes from Sir Walter Raleigh. And he always has this silver, looks like a large letter opener. And on the top of this silver wand, it's the insignia of Sir Walter Raleigh as Duke Governor. So it's a massively important royal marker.
That's the Duke Governor of North America, right?
Yeah, that's the lineage. Now he has quite a few royal markers. The letter from Queen Victoria is the highest document you can have in the British Empire, because on that letter, It's basically like the keys to the country. It says, assemble him claimant.
Queen Victoria sent this letter to her first cousin, King Dom Ferdinand II of Portugal. It read, assemble him claimant. This is recorded in The Hidden King of England, Arma Christi Unveiling the Rose, written over 5 years from 2010 to 2014. We want to document this letter being tested, verifying the envelope seal, the monogram on the letter, the J. Watman Turkey Mill 1850 watermark, Queen Victoria's handwriting, the text in familiar French and its content, and the DNA of Queen Victoria's thumbprint and blood. Here is the letter from Queen Victoria to her firstborn Prince Marcus Manuel, dated St. Patrick's Day, 17th of March 1850, 39 days before he turned 16. Here is Queen Victoria's thumbprint and blood.
It's like the title deed to the United Kingdom. So he was given that 3 times, and he said, look, I don't want it. He never really went looking for this. He's always kind of stumbled around. He's a very curious guy. He gets around traveling everywhere. So it's not like he went looking for it. And, it's been happening very slowly over the last 40-something years from.
How does Greg go ahead getting a letter from Queen Victoria? And when you say he has that letter, obviously she was deceased by the time
that was written in 1840.
So how did he get it then, and how are we supposed to, as an audience, believe or understand that it was intended for him?
Okay, so it's a good question. There's a group of people through the let's say there's a secret society that monitor what goes on in the royal family. This is what I've been able to piece together. They're called Saxburg Coburg Goth. I might have that slightly wrong. This royal governing body more or less make all the decisions about which person sits on the head of the throne in various countries throughout Europe. And they selected Greg and said, okay, you're going to represent New Times, New Age, and basically you have the title Christ, and you're going to represent it because now we're entering into the book of Revelations, and the End Times, New Age started in 2012. So he was like, oh, come on, man, are you sure it's me? Because there was about 5 other possibilities, apparently, 5 other people that semi-fitted the bill, but not everything as far as what Greg fitted with the biblical side and the blood side. So the family from the Portugal section who had this letter, from the Alfonso Marcus, the direct descendant of Queen Victoria, said, okay, you've been chosen by this Rosicrucian group, this governing body. You've been chosen to represent New Times, New Age. So here's the royal letter saying, assemble him claimant. And then he was given a special sword, and there was a ceremony as well in Germany he was at. She has photographs of this ceremonial sword that the Queen has a copy of. Everybody thinks it's the sword that because there's certain things that you're supposed to have when you're on the throne. The Stone of Destiny is supposed to sit underneath the chair. And there's been some questions shed about that as well. This sword, which Greg has been given, the letter of Assemble and Claimant, the letter from Queen Victoria, and the Duke Governor royal warrant from Sir Walter Raleigh, because that ties in with a really important document that's been held in a UK location now, which has a drawing on it on the top left and top right of the royal markers from this. And it has information about the next keeper of the title Christ. So, but he's not saying he's Jesus. I get that a lot. Is he saying he's Jesus? No, he says he's entitled to be the keeper of the Christ title. And he says that he's already been given it by the Pope. But again, nobody's officially done that. But the Pope did make some weird speech on Easter Monday when they mentioned his name.
Joseph of Arimathea secretly the body of Jesus. So he came and took his body. Saint Gregory the Great said that Scripture grows with its readers. It reveals meanings always new.
He mentioned his full name?
They said Joseph of Arimathea. Big pause. There's nobody in the Vatican on Easter Monday because of the COVID. So they said Joseph of Arimathea, and then the camera pans round, and it said, Pope Gregory, your documents are real and true, and not a bone of it can be broken from the prophecy. So, but again, you know, you could say, oh, come on, man, that's a bit, you know, like hearsay, coincidental. But I'm only passing on what he's telling me, because a lot of the codes that he's told me to read from the Portuguese episode, you'll understand that, you know, you can walk around all day in life. It's like seeing the signs. Once you get into the spiritual side, you know, you'll see the signs about numbers and certain times. You see it on your digital clock all the time. You get to understand them. And now I understand the signs more. So I get it.
Well, it's really interesting because, you know, what I heard actually first from your documentary with Joseph Gregory Hallett in a way that I'd never heard before was that a lot of these secret societies are actually very much into symbology. They're very much into prophecies. They're very much into these landmarkers, these milestones. It's kind of like watching that film with Nicolas Cage, National Treasure. Which is based in obviously America, but they're going around and they're finding this symbol, and it's like an Indiana Jones episode that you guys are on in potentially real life. So that's what I find, and I think a lot of people are going to find really interesting. I think I'm going to say it right off the bat. A lot of people watching this are going, well, who gives a hoot about a new king? This previous monarchy clearly didn't care about humanity. They, you know, they're responsible for, you know, their lineage, which is obviously fraught with problems. You know, there's obviously a lot of issues that the existing monarchy has, whether or not their legitimacy is the case. It's very well known they're German ancestry predominantly. It's very well known that they've been responsible for atrocious acts of war and, you know, taking advantage of humanity. So a lot of people are going, well, why would I even care about a new king in the first place? Unless
I get that question a lot. And what I always say is okay, you're associating the word king with what you already know, which are always a very dominant, very aggressive, very belittling, get down on your knees and grovel. He's not interested in that. He says, my job is I'm going to free humanity from the daily slaveries of what we do. Because, I mean, most people, they go to work, they hate their job. They say things like, oh, my God, it's only Wednesday. I wish it was Friday. Because we all have to go out to work to pay the mortgage, to pay the kids' fees, to put the, you know, pay the bills. And he said, I'm not here to do that. And this is why he's pushing common law, because common law gives you a lot more rights as a normal citizen. In common law, you can sue the biggest guy in society. One common man can take the king to court, because the laws have been changed slowly to manipulate and punish us and keep us down. You know, like speeding tickets, for example. In England, it's one of the biggest countries in the world where we have more speed cameras, and believe me, they work very well. They must be made by Germans. Yeah? And, you know, you've got drug dealers, inner city crime, stabbings, murders, rapes. But what are they doing? They're sitting there with a speed camera, you know, getting the motorist for $150. And this sort of behavior has to stop. He wants to say, okay, listen, if we can get organized, we're going to redistribute the money. So if you want to be an artist, or you want to be a painter, or you want to build wooden furniture, or you want to open up your own school where you can teach kids in the middle of a forest surrounded by trees, you know, this is what he wants to do. He wants to free people from the daily, like, oh my God, it's only Wednesday feeling, and reintroduce educational programs that actually work. He wants to, you know, reform healthcare. And it's all tying into what Trump is doing as well. You know, we've all heard this 6,000 technology things being introduced, like med beds and cures for cancer. And, you know, the whole pharmaceutical industry, as your background's from, is one big giant ripoff. You know, I paid $100 once for some amoxicillin in the US. In Europe, they cost me $3. You know, it's a big scam. So we've been educated in a way to keep constantly in debt. To, you know, credit cards, new car. We don't need it.
Property tax.
Exactly. You know why? And he's going to do a flat rate of a 10% income tax. There'll be a tax on something new. But, you know, with the technology, like I really believe that Nikolai Tesla's technology is going to come into this, so we can all have free energy. I'm a big fan of that. And, you know, if we eliminate all of these chores in life, so get this word king out of your heads. That's not what he's about. You know what? He'll probably still be wearing his flip-flops and shorts, because that's the way he is. He's very, 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 very humble. He lives very easily. You know, he's not interested. He doesn't have anything expensive. And, you know, he'll enjoy a beer with you, and then a good chat about history and sociology and all of these things. So, but people out there thinking, why the hell do we need a new king? You're right. We don't. But what we need is a new leader that's going to show us the way and free us from slavery. It's going to open up and let us enhance our spiritual side, so we can all become the beings that we should be, because we're being held back by life's daily chores.
Well, and it seems like modern day systems of enslavement that have been slowly going into place for over hundreds, if not maybe longer, period of years. Okay, I have 2 more points, and then I think we're going to dive into the very interesting section, which I know Joel's really excited to get into as well, because there are a lot of very coincidental, if anything, very entertaining things that come up that we'll get into here in a moment. So
Sure, absolutely.
Here's 2 more points that I think our audience is going to be really interested in hearing about. So one, I think everyone's eager to understand if this is real, right? What you've just said is, hey, it sounds like there's some existing laws, some existing framework where, you know, England and the Commonwealth and how that spreads all over the world to Australia and to Canada and to Ireland, to Wales and to all these other countries, that they currently have existing systems of law in place. And let's face it, if something like this were happening, and we're looking forward to seeing the proof unveil itself more and more so that we can verify that. But let's just keep an open mind right now and say, if that happened, if he were to take over that position of rule, then he could implement freedom for humanity a lot more so, at least in the areas where that ruling is affected. So I think the thing that I'm the most excited about, maybe our audience is to hear, is what additional, have you been a part of any of these conversations, David, where you've talked to or been in the room where Gregory's talked to some of these U.S. Army generals he's talked to?
Yeah, I have.
Or other monarchs or other admirals or other people of existing high positions in other world governments that have helped verify this?
Yeah, Greg doesn't, yes, to answer the question, yes, I have overheard and seen things while I've been with him. Now, there's a lot of trust between myself and Greg, and we have become what I consider friends. You know, I talk to him at least by message every day and just say, hey mate, how are you? And he'll always answer something humorous. He said, God, I really feel like a bar of chocolate. I know I shouldn't. So he said, I'm going to go out for a walk and get one, but it's too hot. I said, well, you have to eat it quickly before it melts, you know, stupid things like that. You know? So that's what I'm saying. He's very normal. As far as getting back on that one, when we were with him, there were several phone calls came in, and he stepped out of the room to take them. And I could hear some information coming back, and he's got a very good contact in LA, and they call him the general. So we got some information there. I can't tell you what that is, though, because it hasn't been verified.
Fair enough. You can just, in general, you know, just generalizing, if from your perspective, if you feel there are important people of positions of existing power that are involved in this dialogue, I think that's good enough.
Yeah, it's mostly to do the U.S. I know he has a contact directly at the White House. I know that he's had this person, the contact, saying that Trump enjoys his videos and Trump likes him. And then there was an interesting one about Greg sent a message saying, hey, I shouldn't be scratching my head now because they'll think that's me making it up. So I'll finish that and then I'll talk. Everybody decodes everything I say, you know. The other day I was doing this and they said, oh, yeah, that's an Illuminati sign. I was like, no, I was just making a point, man. Right? So the other day, well, a few weeks ago, Greg sent a message to the White House saying, I've finished the book of Revelations. And that was the day that Trump walked out of the White House and walked across the street to that church, really weirdly, just held up a copy of the St. James Bible in front of St. John's Church. And he just did that with the Bible and just held it there. He didn't say anything. So they pass messages back and forth all the time like that. And then the documentation that he sent, he signed it, what was it, July the 9th, I think, on episode 3. And then I said, Greg, can you give me all the receipts? He said, yeah, absolutely, mate. So he sent me all these post office receipts, and it's got Buckingham Palace, James's Palace, Windsor Castle, you know, General 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. It's got Putin. It's got Israel. It's got everybody you can think of. I mean, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, you know, everybody. And he's got all the right addresses, and you can see when they went. And then every single one of these packages is being signed for, because you get it, you know, it's all sent registered. So I've got them. I just haven't got around. I've been so busy. I'm going to edit those and put them out there. And you can see that they've been signed for. Okay, you know, many people send documents, but it must have cost them about $500 to send everything. And then the documents he'd signed in court, he's done them so perfectly that it's just, it goes beyond someone who, you know, that, oh, I'm convinced I'm the king, you know, because the expression red tape comes from a document that has tape through it from common law. But he did all his documents in white tape, which is one royalty sending to another royalty. So there's been a lot of information traded between Greg and myself about his official acknowledgement. But of course, my question is, right, Greg, what are we going to, why don't we just get 10,000 troops from the British Army and walk into London, take Downing Street, take the BBC? And he says, you can't do that because, you know, he said, the part of this story was I was told to go to England and wait. That's all he was ever told, because he doesn't really know the whole story. Greg gets images from higher beings, from higher powers in dreams or messages or codes, and then he acts on those. So there isn't a plan that he's following to get himself into the palace. He's, you know, he's sitting at home and with these sandals, and he's doing these legal documents to get everything tied up, dotting the I's, crossing the T's. But yes, definitely, I know inside information.
Now, one of the elephants in the room, David, are that obviously Greg's mother and sister have come out and said, hey, this guy's completely full of BS.
Yeah, I can address that. That's easy.
Yeah, we found an interview 5 or 7 years back, which we'll send you the link for. And,
no, I've seen them all. Don't worry, I've seen them all.
And you know, and he says that a group of German scientists told him he could choose whatever role he wants to run with. Which
this is a good video, actually.
And so, you know, what response have you chatted about with Greg regarding these things?
Well, the first video was let's talk about when they said he was what was it called, the MK Ultra, where his mind was programmed. Okay. So right after the Berlin Wall came down, Greg had a job. I don't know what, he's an architect by trade. Now, whether he was an architect at this particular time, I don't know, but he was based in Budapest. And he used to go to Russia because Budapest, Hungary, was a communist country. So he went into the middle of Red Square and he shouted out in Russian, KGB subsection something, a special department. And he was approached by a few different people that said, are you crazy? Why are you shouting this? You'll get killed. So he made some interesting contacts while he was in Russia, just goofing around. He was a young bloke, you know, a few beers and winding people up. And one of them said, you know, you are Australian? He said, no, I'm from New Zealand. They said, well, in Australia, we have what we call honeypots. We have these women that are trained specially. So he uncovered this plot that was training women to become very seductive, and they were strategically placed in amongst the community where diplomats were. And then they said they had another program that they can program somebody's mind to be a prime minister or a leader or, you know, anything. So he said, yeah, I don't believe that. So the guy turned up in New Zealand years later, and they were talking about it. And he says, come on, then. You know, brainwash me into becoming the next prime minister. So the guy did around 8 or 10 hours of, you know, this exercise thing. And he says, yeah, he says it was interesting, but obviously it didn't work because I'm not prime minister, am I? So that's that whole thing. Greg is super curious. It's a bit like, you know, I want to taste that sauce. I want to taste this sauce. He'll go into things in such detail, religion or philosophy or archaeology. I mean, he knows all about it. So that particular video about that was based on him 30 odd years ago, being younger, being curious, and saying, okay, let me have a smoke off that joint, which was the MK Ultra, what they said MK Ultra. But of course, it's again one of these guys that, that said, I know the truth about 9/11. 900,000 people say they know it, or they were in there, or they were, or I know that I know who the fourth man on the grassy knoll is. It's one of these situations. People say, yeah, I was a sleeper for the Russians in the 80s. Come on, man. So that's that story. His family, okay. His family is a strange one, but there's ways to relate this. If you're going through a spiritual journey right now, and you believe that the COVID-19 virus is a smokescreen for everything else, how many people have you told that say you're full of shit? You're crazy. Put your mask on, stay in the house, watch CNN, and just, believe what you're seeing through the news. So on this particular journey we're all on right now, we've all lost family members because they all think we're crazy. My mother thinks I'm in a cult because I'm this, doing this thing with the king. Honestly, she does. And so his family are strange. Now, at the start of the story, we contacted one of his sisters who's actually in an institution in New Zealand. She's in some sort of lightly guarded, facility. So that made us suspicious. And then the video that you see is a phone with another filming device here, and they cut it. Are you coming on or off? And it's not one whole unedited version of the call. And he told me a story that when they were younger, right, his older brother was given a lot of heroin by the New Zealand government, and they forced him into becoming a drug dealer. So Greg pulled away from that. Greg lent him his car once, and he drove all over Auckland selling little, heroin deals. So Greg said, look, I don't want anything to do with that. You do your own thing. And then his mother and his sister, he says it's the story of the three ugly sisters. He said, my sister got so weird that when my friends came around, they used to say, oh, I've just seen your other brother. He says, I only have one brother. That's my sister. And when they moved from one town, she was such a nightmare that they actually moved and didn't tell her where they were going. I mean, she was an adult. She wasn't a kid. She's a fully grown adult. But he said, my mother and my sisters and my brother, I haven't spoken to for over 25 years. So whatever they've been doing, he said, I really don't know. He said, I don't even have their numbers on my phone. I had to abandon everybody because of the journey I've been on and the way I was going. And they were just so negative and so bad, I just couldn't be around them. They're all addicted to drugs, whether it's pharmaceutical pills that keep them sleeping and docile, or heavier things from the opioid business, from being heroin. His brother's got a record as long as his arm in there. So is
the heroin thing related to he was referencing that he got Prince Philip's in an agent of his admitting in court that they were employing heroin traffickers to target the real royal family.
Yeah, he's written 15 books. This is how he makes a living. That's another question. How does he make his money? He's written 15 books, and a lot of them are about the corruption and the heroin business that the royal family are involved with, and all of the highest people in the government of New Zealand. And there's videos of him outside the courtroom, saying that person there is married to this person, that person. I mean, he's uncovered everything. And he was wearing a big chain around his neck because he chained himself to the railings to expose the corruption and the dealing. It's quite an old video. You can see he's maybe 10 years ago. He's not as great. So he says, Mahoney, do you know the story of Cinderella and the three ugly sisters? He said, that's my mother and my two sisters. Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. And, those kinds of family divides happen. The video that we dug up here was from 2013, October 23rd, Project Camelot, James Bond is Real, live part 1. And this woman now has it up on YouTube. She says, why I deleted my Greg Hallett video. And it is really interesting when you take a look at it. He basically says in the video that he's written a number of books. He lists off that he has a lot of qualifications, and he mentions some sort of offhanded statement like, I went to Germany and some scientists told me, pick whatever role you want.
Yeah, that was it.
Yeah, and I chose, I think he says something like the King
Chancellor.
of Wales or something. It wasn't like King of England. It was something else. And so
no, it was Chancellor or something, or President or something, wasn't it?
No, I think it says, we could go through it. It's 5 minutes long. We could look at it now, or we could look at it later.
No, I mean, that was the story. Yeah. Whatever they said, he more or less said, come on then, big mouth. Show me how you're going to transform my brain into me believing that I'm going to be, the next. I thought he was saying it was something to do with New Zealand, but I could be wrong. I've watched it once a few months ago.
Yeah, and we can share that. We can throw that in the description below hand. But the point is, here at Conscious Vitality, we just want to keep an open mind. We want everyone to be empowered with making up their own decisions. Listen, this guy could be, totally fabricating the whole thing. It seems like he's gone to an awful lot of work to do so, if that's the case. The whole biblical thing, that's where it becomes very subjective. It's a prophecy. It's clearly open to interpretation. Here's the point from my perspective personally. We've been receiving a lot of evidence here at Conscious Vitality. Joel and I have been doing a lot of research behind the scenes that it appears as if we have a lot of circumstantial evidence that the British royal family, MI6, their intelligence agency, and unfortunately a number of other intelligence agencies, both in North America, in the United States, and around the world, have been up to no good. It does appear as there's been some really bad stuff behind the scenes, and it appears as if the Queen of England, unfortunately, was very much involved in that. Through our own research, it appears as if she was very much the head of it, and it also appears very plain sight that they're even not actually British; they're Germanic of origin. And just with our own research, we found our own evidence to support that. So I think we're very much open to the concept of having someone new that's cool, that you can have a beard with, that appreciates humanity, that's going to look after us a little bit more so, that's going to remove us from some of these puppet strings of slavery, that allows us to live a free life, to pursue our passions, to pursue
100%.
Yeah, we want conscious evolution. So in that sense, if there really is someone that has a right to step in there, if there really are these big movements and big changes happening around the world where Trump really is leading a silent civil war against the deep state in the United States, Greg's involved in helping with that in the UK, rock and roll, we're all for it, but we have to do the journalistic job of...
I'm exactly the same. I'm still looking at this. I'm still trying to I'm staying right in the middle. I mean, I'm a little bit biased because I'm around him. And it boils down to this. I believe he's telling the truth, but whether he can achieve this monumental task, only time will tell. And I said that at the end of episode 1, and I still stand by those words. He's a hell of a guy. Regardless, we'll be friends. But whether he can do it or not, time will tell. But, every day there's a little bit more crazy things and, things coming out in the press, which let me think that, that's interesting. So, next question.
I was curious where you think, we're going next with this, because we're seeing a lot of world leaders now who are, kings and queens of their own respected countries. We're seeing in Spain and in Denmark. These leaders are just, walking away from their titles. What do you see as the next step for, Greg potentially taking the throne? And
well, one of the things that Greg told me when I first met him, he says, wherever I go, the royalty seemed to just abdicate or just crumble. He says, I went to Berlin and the Berlin Wall fell down. I went to Russia and communists collapsed. I went to Holland, the Queen of Holland abdicated. When I went to Spain, King Carlos abdicated. He only went to Portugal after that. So the King Carlos thing is very interesting. So let's just touch on that for a second, because this is very recent, right? So Juan Carlos, has been accused of some sort of naughty goings on with 100 million euros. So that's what, $120 million. So my statement was, come on, man. 120 million is that guy's bar bill a year. I remember at the time I was pouring a glass of wine when I heard I thought, I'm watching the wines that King Carlos, because Spanish wines are amazing. Imagine the wine that guy's had in his life being king for all those years, right? So if it was real, about 120 million, the first thing he would do, because Spain's an exceptionally corrupt country, he would go in there and say, there's 2 million, there's 5 million, make this go away, and that will be it. And then you're telling me that what they were saying is that he's gone to the Dominican Republic. Have you been to the Dominican Republic? I mean, you can't go out your hotel there because it's that dangerous on the streets. So he's going to leave Spain which is an absolutely beautiful country. It's safe and sophisticated, and he's going to go to the Dominican Republic for $120 million. There's no way, man. He's 80. They're never going to give him jail time. All right, there's your money back and give me 6 months or 5 years suspended sentence. He's 80 years old. They're never going to put him in, but he's had to leave the country. So that stinks, that story. Personally, I think that's got cocaine smuggling and human trafficking written all over it. And I think they've got him on something that's that deep. I don't think he's even in Spain. I don't think he's in the Dominican Republic. I think he's a little bit further over there, a little bit further, what would that be, west, in a nice place in the south of Cuba. That's where I think he is. Now, all these other kings and queens, all this other stuff, let's just go through what's been happening in England, okay? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So the Queen opened Parliament, and normally when she opens Parliament, she's in full regalia. The crown, the scepter, the orb, she's got all of that in full ermine, in all of her royalty, and Philip's the same. The last time she went, she was sat there in a green dress and he had a dark blue suit on. Now, that's never happened in royal family history ever, in opening Parliament. And then they say, oh, it was just a soft opening because they opened it before and then they opened it again. So, okay, then we just throw all tradition for the last 1,000 years out the window because it's a soft opening. Should we just do that? Yeah, come on then. Let's have a couple of cans of lager while we're sitting on the throne, yeah? It's total rubbish. Then the next thing, Harry and Meghan decide, you know what? I've had enough of this royalty. We're getting too much stick from the press about her being of a different race than me. What's the polite thing to say? Afro-American? Black? I don't know anymore what's politically correct. But he says, oh, you know what? We're just going to, there's your royal title. We'll give that back. We're going to go to America and we're going to go and live there, you know? Who does that? You're going to give up all them millions of dollars every year? Harry disappeared because he's not even the son of Charles. He's the son of James Hewitt, who I've met many times. He had a bar in Spain. He's a spitting image of him. And when you mention it, he goes, he never talks about it, but he mumbles. Okay? So he disappears. Then you've got William, who's not really making any statements about it. Prince Charles is on television about 6 weeks ago, and it's clearly a body double because the guy on television has got a missing fingertip. Really big, fat, swollen fingers. The hairline and jawline's different. And thousands of people were saying, that's not Prince Charles that just did that interview on Sky TV. So why is Charles being a body double? Don't get it, okay? There's one missing emblem on the gate. The others are still on, but the one missing emblem that's off is the Rothschild emblem. And they said it was hit by a truck last October. So you're telling me since October to August that the Queen doesn't have enough money to fix it, or she can't find anybody to fix it? But it's not exactly made out of real unicorn, is it? They don't have to go and slaughter a dolphin or something to make it. You've got 50 people in London that could do that.
Yeah. Well, and this is where it's really, really coincidentally weird and interesting. So I love this part of the interviews because we've covered the evidence, we've broached the story, we've summarized everything. Now we get into all the really weirdly interesting coincidences where
I've got one more that's happened recently, okay? There was an old war veteran in England, and during COVID-19, he walked around his garden on his walker. I think the guy's about 95 or something, right? So he walked around, and he raised money for the National Health Service in England. And he raised millions. I think he raised about 10, 15 million, a lot of money. So the Queen gave him a knighthood, which is great. He's a war veteran in his 90s. I think he's been to both world wars. He spent the whole time raising money for a good cause. So he goes to Windsor Castle to get his knighthood, and it's a massive honor doing that, right? So in the middle of Windsor Castle, there's a chair which looks like a makeshift throne, and he's there on his walking frame. The Queen comes out in the same green outfit she's worn on 2 other occasions. The Queen has never been seen in the same dress twice in 70 years. But this time she's out in the same green outfit, green hat, green dress, green bag, that she's been spotted twice in. She comes out with one guy in naval uniform smiling like he's really nervous. And there wasn't even a military band there. Okay, he's saying, oh, social distancing. All right, man, have them 2 meters apart. They're playing trumpets and trombones and bleeding massive loud musical instruments. They don't need to be very close to us to hear it. As a sign of respect for a war veteran who's been in 2 world wars and raised millions of pounds for the health service, you'd think they would have a live band playing something military for him. But no, there was 4 or 5 people at that event. It was a complete and utter insult to that poor guy, because that was no way the Queen doing that. She would have had a band there and she wouldn't have had the same outfit on. So the whole thing stinks. Everything they've been telling, you know, and then the other day she was riding a horse. She's 95 years old. She can't get up a flight of stairs. You think she's going to get on a bloody great big Budweiser horse and ride around?
You know, with his claims about the Queen, is he fully claiming that, you know, since 2000, like, I think it was either 14 or 11, he has, like, ownership, like, he's watching over, you know, not protecting, well, yes, in a way, like, making sure she lives out her days, the Queen, like, the real Queen, because you're saying the one that we're seeing is a body double or...
yeah, she's called Sanderson, Mrs. Sanderson. She's done a lot of films for the Queen. So
where's the real Queen? This
is debatable. I mean, you know, apparently she left Buckingham Palace and she went to Windsor, which is about an hour up the road. Mm-hmm. And then when Greg signed these papers and put them in saying, you know, you now have 21 days to contest, she then left Windsor and went to Balmoral, which is in Scotland. But again, you know, you can't trust a single photograph that you see in the paper. You can't trust the interviews because she's got a body double. I mean, you can't trust it. I mean, there's people saying that she's already died. I've heard rumors that Prince Philip's already died. I mean, I heard that from somebody. She says, my uncle works on one of the estates that Prince Philip is on. And he's texted me saying he died back in January or February, but they haven't announced it yet. And the pictures that the press released, they could be from anywhere, like any time period, you know? So if she's still alive, she's probably in Balmoral. But if she's been picked up and charged with crimes against humanity, you know, because we all get those emails where there's a list of famous people that have gone bye-bye. Yeah. Bye-bye. Well, I mean, you can't verify him. So...
Well, and this is where it gets really interesting, because at the very same time, like, how interesting is 2020? Talk about the year of really weird stuff happening and a lot of coincidences. So the year that 2020, this year, we have obviously a global pandemic. Joseph Gregory Hallett comes out, talks about his rightful claim to the British throne, biblically fulfilling prophecy, as well as bloodline genetics. We then also have President Trump and the whole QAnon movement that's unveiling information for the first time that we've ever seen, where it's not making statements, it's leaving clues that people are going out, doing their own research on, and finding very disturbing information that appears to be very, very much connected. We have royalty abdicating thrones all over the world. We have a young man here in in North America, in the United States, Austin Steinbart, coming out saying he's actually responsible for the Q drops, which are happening from the future using quantum computing, giving him a game plan from the future to help win a silent civil war against the deep state, which involves how he refers to it as the British royal death racket, and ultimately a Game of Thrones scenario. Now, what's really interesting is that here at Conscious Vitality, we do shows live to our private membership audience. So this show, David, it's going to go first of all to our private members. We give them an opportunity to exchange in it. We have like a whole social media platform behind the scenes, because obviously YouTube, all these major social media platforms, they're censored. They don't let the information get out. You know, people can't share freely what their actual thoughts and opinions are. Some people don't want to publicly. And then afterwards, we'll put a version of this interview live to our public medium as well. So we've been doing a lot of research, and what's really interesting from our perspective, because we've been doing these secret Space Force shows.
Yeah, I haven't seen them. I saw a clip of it. I should watch it, actually. Every time I watch it, something comes up, I've got to run. So
yeah, I don't know how many rabbit holes, you know, you want to go down, but
go on. Sorry, I'm sorry to interrupt. Go on.
Oh, don't apologize. No, it is fascinating stuff. But here's the trippy thing. So we originally started this talking about cosmic disclosure.
Yeah.
I had a friend that I knew from the medical sciences world. My wife and I, we owned a pharmaceutical group. Before that, we had a science-based health publishing site. So we would work with doctors and scientists from very reputable institutions. And we knew a guy from that world that was very, very important in the stem cell world. And he was coming out and actually saying, you know what, I actually worked with private military contractors. Extraterrestrials are real. Our government's been working with them for years. We get a lot of our technology from them. And I was going to this guy, have you lost your friggin' mind? Like, do you need money? Like, I can, you know, you don't have to go to these lengths. And he was telling me actually the discoveries that I made and shared in that medical science world came from these private military contractor things where we're working with ETs. And I actually, it was really interesting the way it came to me because I had a good reason to believe him because he was very credible in a very credible industry prior to me knowing about that. So we started off in this cosmic disclosure space. That led into us covering Secret Space Force. That led to us understanding QAnon, what's going on, and now Austin Steinberg. We've also featured, you know, your documentary. The craziest thing, David, now that we've gone through each of these topics in depth, and I know Joel's going to agree with me, most of them are saying the exact same things.
It's all linked.
It's all linked, and they don't know that. But we're behind the scenes doing it all, and we're going, holy moly, man.
That's good, isn't it?
Like, as an example, you know, this one young man that comes out and he said that he's running the Cube Boards from the future as the future commander of the Space Force. He talks about quantum computing. Well, in our Space Force stuff, they also talk about quantum computing. So we're a little bit more in time travel. We're a little bit more open-minded to it. Gregory Hallett talks about the fact that this Treaty of Tortoisai, I hope I'm saying that correctly, it is ultimately the major document, the major treaty that is what's been running the world behind the scenes, almost like the Game of Thrones behind the scenes. Austin Steinbart says the same thing, right? Austin and Greg need to do an interview together because
that's a great idea, actually.
Yeah, because we're, you know, Joel's reached out to them. We've reached out to them as a company. We're looking forward to understanding more so about what it is that they're really up to as we continue our investigative, you know, journalist approach to verifying what it is that they're up to. But they're saying the exact same things, interestingly enough, you know, that the world has ultimately been run through this demarcation, this separation.
Oh, yeah, you can believe it. But, you know, the great thing now is like, there's such an amazing feeling. Every day you get up, it's like exciting, you know. I can feel it inside my soul. Every day getting a bit more, getting a bit more. And, you know, I'm a huge anti-masker. I won't wear one. And my friend that I do all the videos with, Lee, he's very up on all of the science towards, you know, the 50, what is it called? 50 mic, I don't know what it is, 50 microns, but we won't wear masks. And we've been thrown out of everywhere. And they say, well, I'm going to call the police. I say, go on and call the police. Come on, put the handcuffs on. And they don't, because they know it's totally against the human rights. And if you get a fine here in Spain, the judge throws it out. So, yeah, I can feel that excitement building every day, every day, every day. And I saw something the other day about Trump saying, this might be the last time you see me.
For a while.
Which makes sense. Because I'm super excited now to see what's going to happen, because we're more or less 90 days away from the election. And I think this is going to go right to the election. This fight from the deep state. They're going to carry on doing insane things like that. The explosion in Beirut the other day. They were saying, oh, Trump blew it up. It's saying, if Trump was going to blow that up, he'd blow it up on the day they're all in the mosque. He wouldn't have that many civilians killed, so that was not him. And they said, I don't believe it was a missile, because the footage I've seen on a missile is all from the same camera. All coming in. It might be from another one, but it was too deep on the ground. How is that missile going to bury itself down in the ground and blow it up like that? So I think it was an underground dump. But yeah, it's interesting.
You know, I watched a piece from skynews.au from Australia. I don't know if it's a totally legitimate news source or not, but they seem to have journalists, you know, all over the world. They were showing a clip how they've discovered a labyrinth of underground tunnels under that building in Beirut, which is
that's probably more realistic. Yeah. You know, genetic experiments, child trafficking, drug trafficking, the usual list, the usual suspects are involved. So I think they blew it up themselves to hide the evidence. And now if Trump is going to do what he's going to do next, you know, on a normal year, there's 800 to 1,000 sealed indictments and in 2020, there's 167,000 sealed indictments ready to go. If he's going to do it, he's going to do it now because he's going to need 3 months before the elections. So the next 90 days for me is going to be, you know, put your boxing gloves on, guys. Let's go. It's going to be great.
When you're bringing up Trump, I think one of the most interesting things about Joseph Gregory Hallett's story is the fact that, you know, he's not just some guy claiming to be the king. He's claiming that he's been working with Trump since the 1980s to help accomplish this.
Yeah, well, that story, Greg always tells it the same way. And I've asked him several times about it because he's told me at 3 in the morning after 3 bottles of wine together. He's told me 9 in the morning with a cup of coffee. And it's always been the same. He went to Greece. He was brought to Greece by the CIA. They asked him, was he Kronos? He hadn't a clue. He's like, yeah, maybe. And they said, go and take a walk on the Parthenon. So he was up there having a cigarette or having a beer or whatever he does. And then all of a sudden, this guy's behind him. And he said, I said, well, what's he pointing at you with his finger? Like, you. He's saying, no. He was more or less doing it like a politician where they hold the finger like this. And he was affirming his plan to clean out the corruption. And he kept saying, make America great again. So he said, I didn't really know who he was. I just remember thinking, well, it's some American nutter. But he said, a few years later, I recognized him. And then he's been doing it for a while. So the plan that Trump is on now, I certainly believe that it's been well orchestrated. Because
so he's been saying, wow, good.
Yeah. The changes that have happened in such a short period of time, I mean, you can see them all squirming. I mean, yeah. And there's stuff coming out about, you know, the first big, real clear indication of what he's talking about is true was when he signed the mandates for the child trafficking. This was great. But then when General Flynn was exonerated and he's got them all by the short and curlies, and they're all going to be hung up because there's no way that Biden didn't know about it. There's no way that Obama didn't know about it. It's got to be signed from the top. So it's genius what he's doing. I wasn't really a big fan. I mean, I thought he was entertaining. But now I can see clearly and I read the codes better. You know, whoa, let's get an RV. We'll drive around America in an RV. Wouldn't that be great? You know. And everyone thinks, what a moron. What's he talking about, an RV? But, you know, we know what he's talking about.
Yeah, there's a lot of Trump speak going on, and Greg has mentioned that he even Trump speaked him into one of his speeches when he was saying, like, Greg, you know, he's got great genes. But to make sure I heard that correctly, you're saying that Joseph Gregory Hallett heard Donald Trump saying, make America great again in the
he was talking about that. Yeah, he was talking about how he wanted to get rid of all the corruption. America's falling into the hands. There's no production. We're losing all the production. I want to make America great. And yeah, he was very positive. And he said he affirmed his authority by his manner of speaking. And he said, I felt like I was at a speech and he was talking to me. And as far as I was concerned, it was just I was just a random person that was stood next to him and happened to speak English. But he kind of narrowed them out. But they said that Kronos is the keeper of time. And also that Trump was Kronos. And then Greg told me another good one about the reincarnation. Have you heard this one, guys? Right. So Greg was picked up in a library in Boston after he was in the library investigating a driver that General Patton had. And the driver was called Woody. And as soon as he asked for this book, 20 minutes, 30 minutes later, 2 CIA guys turned up and took him outside and said, I'm going to scratch now. This is just a scratch, right? This is not a code. 2 CIA guys took him outside and said, you need to go to Greece. He says, well, I haven't got the money. I'm just backpacking around America. He said, here's $1,000. Go to Greece. And that's when he ended up in Greece to meet Trump. And he was picked up by the CIA on the other side. And then that happened. But
yeah, he said it was a CIA esoteric division.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the story why he was in there, he says, I kept having dreams about General Patton. And I kept seeing myself driving. So he said, I did some research about who was Patton's driver.
Yeah, well, there's some very interesting things, you know, like I'm sure you've already seen already The Adventures of Little Baron Trump.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's crazy. You know, like it's literally a young man named Barron Trump who goes underground. It's all about time traveling. He eventually becomes the last president, and the master of time travel is named Don. It's a real trip.
I didn't know that, but I know the story. Yeah, it is. You can go on and on and on with this list of coincidences. And if you want to know, I'm trying to stay on subject. You guys are fascinating. I love this. You know, anywhere else would probably be, you know, they'd be coming away and locking us up for this talk. But one of the other things, Greg has tried his best to edit some of these videos he puts out. And I've asked him, let me do it because we'll present them in a better, more professional way. But he put out a video last week about Meet the Fockers.
Wandering peddlers and nameless peasants. As long as there have been Burgesses, there's always been a patriarch to lead our family through good times and bad. And I finally come to the realization that the next in line to the throne, Greg, is you.
I saw that, yeah.
Now, the message in there, there's way too many name drops and items in there that are coincidental. So I'm going to do a video with Greg. We're going to sit down in front of the fireplace. I'm going to say, right, let's talk Hollywood. And we're going to take all the films that his name's been mentioned in, show the clips, explain the clips, then move on to the next one. Because you know what? There's a lot of common names, you know, between Harry, Tom, and whatever, you know. They're all named in some movies at some stage. I've got a very common first name. So for me to go on and say, well, you know, they said David and, you know, the only claim to fame I've got is Mahoney was the main character in Police Academy, so I get that a lot.
I remember that.
Yeah. But there's way too many films out there that say Halit and Halat and Sovereign and Greg, you will be on the throne. It's just the chances of coincidence for being a coincidence, I think you'd be stretching it. But I've got to document them all because he says, you know, even in The Mummy with Tom Cruise, you know, his name is mentioned in that, and I've got the clip there. I haven't watched it properly because, again, I keep getting distracted. So you talk about coincidences and literature and films to put out messages to people. I think it's highly likely that that's been doing it. I always thought Steven Spielberg was very well connected because the messages about extraterrestrials and in all of his films since Close Encounters, he's been putting more and more messages out there. I feel like he's definitely got some inside info. So.
Yeah, definitely. And that's something, a space that we cover quite a bit. What I can share that from a personal experience I had when I was a younger man, I had a friend's dad who worked on a United States Air Force base, and he was actually in a program where he was an investigative journalist into extraterrestrials. And he told us when we were in our early 20s, about 20 years old, that the reason Hollywood puts this stuff into media is because it's real. There's many elements of it are real. Sometimes there's some disinformation, but overall, let's say like the little gray alien is real. And the reason they put it in there is so that even in a fictional context, when you watch it happen, should it ever come out in public, when you see it as a member of the general public, you won't feel betrayed and want to revolt against your government for withholding that information, but rather your subconscious mind will go, I knew that.
Yeah, you're not so shocked by it.
Not so shocked by it. So, David, I think one thing that our audience would love to hear is let's keeping an open mind, saying that this stuff is real. What would the next steps look like for Gregory Joseph Hallett from this point forward to the end of the year? I'm Canadian, so I'm a little bit more up to speed on the royal monarchy and the formal events and the things that typically happen. I know that during Christmas time, you know, the Queen has to come out and do some formal activities. Are there any specific dates or times or events that are absolutely going to confirm his position that you could share with us are upcoming for the future so that we could say, hey, if this is true, this is what's going to happen and this is how we're going to see the proof?
Well, yes and no. I mean, there's something I have to announce probably Friday or Saturday. I'm actually just going through the well, look, I'll tell you guys now because by the time you edit it, it'll be public anyway, yeah? Mm-hmm. Greg called me 2 days ago. Actually, no, it was, last night or the night before. I can get mixed up. And he said he's discovered that the British Parliament had already forced the Queen into renouncing her sovereignty and signing all the powers that she has to the Parliament. And that happened in January. So he said, the papers that I gave in November that I sent to Boris Johnson, he acted upon them, and they put a plan into place to take the power off the Queen because they knew that she was going to lose it anyway. And they were concerned that it would fall into the hands of Greg without them really knowing who he was. Now, those are his words. So what that means now is that the British Parliament, I would presume that Boris Johnson is the head of that, has got his finger on the nuke buttons. Now, I don't think he's bloodthirsty, so let's not get carried away and putting on our helmets and getting in the bunkers. But it does mean that he's got control of the entire British military forces. Now, why did he do this? I said, Greg. He said, well, I think because she was elderly and they basically knew that her days were numbered. Because Trump went to England on June 3rd, 2019, and he walked around in front and pushed everybody about. And he was inspecting the guard. And then his helicopter flew up to where Greg lives and hovered over that lake that we portrayed as being the Sea of Galilee. And I tell you what, guys, when we made the video, we only had to turn the picture around and get the angle right on Google Maps, on Google Earth rather. It fitted right in. I mean, there's a little bit of sand on either side of it, but I mean, it's too close for it not to be true.
That was really interesting for sure.
Yeah, and we didn't manipulate. I haven't manipulated. We're not using any Hollywood tricks, I assure you. We're all too hungover for that. So what it means is now that the power that the Queen has, because her days were gone. I think Boris Johnson knew that. They all knew that. I think Trump went there to say, listen, I'm taking over because you're out of here. We know all about the heroin. We know all about the human trafficking. We know all about the corruption. We know all about everything. And I'm coming back very soon, and you're stuffed. So the British Parliament are in control of the sovereignty powers now. And the way the documentation is set up, they can actually choose who they give it to. So I said, well, that sounds pretty good. He said, yeah. He says, it's good in one way because now it's a lot easier to take the power from Boris Johnson than it would be from the Queen. Mm-hmm. So what we're waiting for is an official acknowledgement. Somebody of high authority like Trump or Johnson or somebody. So my mission is to get the public used to this idea. And I'm doing it in a way that's clever and sensitive, because there's something called Operation London Bridge. You can Google this. It's on Wikipedia. Operation London Bridge is the response to a code word called London Bridge has fallen, which is when the Queen is officially dead, what happens? So all of the government bodies inside the government, you've got the Navy, you've got the Army, you've got the Air Force, you've got the Parliament, you've got the police force, everybody. They all have a contingency plan and a sealed envelope, which they'll open when they hear that London Bridge is falling. And it means Operation London Bridge is in effect when all of the government bodies come together because they need to all have, it's like Operation Valkyrie, the film that Tom Cruise did in Berlin during World War II. So I think when that happens, this is when Greg's going to step in. Or somebody of very high authority, like the British Prime Minister or Trump, says, you know what, they'll start to release it in the press. You know, if Trump says, oh, this guy, Joseph Gregg, I saw his documents. So Greg's relaxed. Now, with this news about what they actually did in January, forcing her to sign a document renouncing her powers, he's now acting upon that, preparing more legal documents to put into the court to saying, well, actually, nobody has the power. He described it like this. He said, imagine you have a car. And I said, that's my car. But you didn't answer me. But what you did is you hid the car. You drove the car somewhere else and you hid it in your friend's garage. You say, that's an act of guilty by not doing anything. But what you did was an act of showing us that I'm right. It is my car. And he said, that's what's going on now. So he's putting this documentation together furiously so he can get it lodged in the common law courts to say he knows about it. I'm going to expose it in the next few days when I get the green light. And that might be the catalyst that we need to get something seriously rolling very fast.
Well, we live in a very cool time right now with all this stuff, David, because, and as a journalist, for Joel and I, for everyone here at Conscious Vitality, it's really hard for us not to be biased, obviously, because we do want to believe that if this deep state, the satanic cabal, if that's all true, if there is child trafficking that's been going on for a while, if all of these horrible atrocities, not just drug trafficking, arms smuggling, that's obviously bad, intentionally creating wars. It's crazy how as a society, we almost just accept the fact that they probably have been falsifying wars, and society's kind of, just okay with that. We go back to our day-to-day lives, even though innocent people are dying. But it's a bizarre red pill to swallow, a very big pill to swallow, that kids have been trafficked knowingly by people in elite government and royal monarchistic, it's horrific. It's horrible to imagine. And it's very difficult, therefore, to be biased as a journalist, unbiased rather.
Yeah.
And not connect all these dots, because it sure as heck really looks to be happening. And that's
too circumstantial to not be true. Really.
It's like, okay, well, we heard from QAnon that this is happening. Okay, well, this happened to General Flynn. Well, that looks really like it could have been. Well, Trump, is saying these things. Well, yeah, that really looks like that. Well, Trump's arrest record for child trafficking and human trafficking is 3 times what any other presidential administration has ever been. Well, that's really interesting.
I think it might be more.
Monarchies we're always conservative. We try to be conservative here. Monarchies are abdicating left, right, and center. Austin Steinbart threatened the life of the Queen of Denmark if she didn't give back Greenland. Wait a minute, Denmark doesn't own Greenland. And sure enough, she abdicates on the day he threatens her. That he threatened her life, and she abdicates on the exact day he gave her. This is all getting a little too coincidental.
All of the monarchy in Europe are all fake. He's told me that they're all going to start crumbling. All of them. Sweden, Norway, Denmark. I don't even know the rest of them. Belgium. These guys are all sweating it. Belgium is a country that is, oh my God, the blackness in Belgium is probably one of the worst in the UK, in Europe. It's terrible. The energy and the stuff that's gone on there. But yeah, one of my favorite expressions, I get this all the time, and I have a few life rules. And one of the rules on spirituality, and I've been into this for a long time, guys. Over 15 years, I've been watching what's going on and looking for signs, and I've let things guide me. Was when somebody asks you something, they say, well, tell me about, what do you think about 9/11? And then you say, well, you can't tell them the truth. You got to say, well, what do you think? So it's basically, if you got a list of 10 things and they ask you about number 1, and then they get a little bit excited, and then they ask you about number 3, you can't jump them forward. So that ties into the expression I have. You've got to let them all get to number 2 and then absorb that and get to number 3 and get to number 4 and get up through the list. But what I say it's very easy. Stop thinking and start feeling. And what do you feel is true? And with all of these things that we're discussing here today, about all of these coincidental points of monarchy falling, scandals coming out, is you can feel it's true. And that's the difference. I hear things and say, that's not true. I can feel it's not true. But every single day, there's little more bits of peanuts or little breadcrumb trails. 3 people arrested, pedophile ring taken down, container found here, and this blows up and all these other places blow up. They're releasing very small pieces of the pie of the puzzle every day, and that's just what's adding up. Now in Spain the other day, they announced on September the 18th we're going to have a lockdown. So the first thing I did, I said, well, where's the source from? So I looked up the source. It's quite a good foreign newspaper here. I said, well, what if it's that bad, why don't they lock it down today? How can you tell us it's going to be bad in September 18th? Like in a month from now? What are you got a looking glass there? And then they said, no, that's not true. We didn't mean to put that out. So, you can feel when things are right and you can feel when things are wrong. It's a bit like your tongue. You put something in your mouth, oh, I don't like that. That milk is bad. You spit it out. It's an early warning system. And that's what your consciousness inside is there for. Once you tune into what your soul knows about, it answers all your questions. And it's actually a fantastically liberating feeling. And for all these people that are just watching this now, once you reject fear and you accept love, because with fear, you've got all of its friends. You've got jealousy, paranoia, you know, anger, and they all come to the party when fear comes in. But if you keep fear out of it and just keep love, it's all nice and peaceful and calming, and it's a very relaxing feeling. I was super relaxed during the quarantine and the lockdown. So
with the ways you're
not feeling, that's what I love.
Yeah, with the way, exactly that, like with what you're, you know, the way the audience is reacting to this and the way they're feeling out Greg's story and the way you're perceiving the story has been, you know, just so great to watch. Tell us about, you know, globally, how people are feeling about it. What's the audience look like? How many people are following this story?
Well, the followers, it's hard to tell because Charlie Ward's show, I haven't done anything. I've only done 2 Zoom calls with Greg in the last few weeks because I've been editing this next episode. But we estimate between 2 and 3 million people have watched the shows because we got about 2 million people, but most people watch it with 2 or 3 family members. And there's that many other groups that I can't really track it because I gave it to the world for free. Man, I didn't know what to do. I thought, you know what? I'll just make a few episodes and, you know, I'm not worried about it, but it's cost me a fortune, but all right, you know, it doesn't matter. But we can't really track it. So we estimate about 3 million people, but there's certain countries that have really gone for it. You know, America is probably the biggest market for us. South America is very good. Actually, Ira, your wife is from Brazil. Brazil is a huge market. I've been to Brazil many times. I lived there for a while. And the people of Brazil are seriously lost. I mean, they've been repressed and pushed down. The energy in Brazil, it's such a nice place, but the people I really sympathize with. So we've got a really good girl in Brazil, and that's a massively growing fan base. Statistically wise, it's 96, 97%. The other people, there's a lot of people saying, well, I'd like to believe it, but I'll believe it when I see it. And then you get the religious nutters who say, Antichrist is here, the Armageddon. Which I quite enjoy those, you know, because you got criticism is good too. But overall, people feel that he's telling the truth, and he seems to resonate something that people just love him. I've never done a show, and all the movies I've done and all these other things, I've never had anything hit 96%. So, and it's actually 96, 97.
And when you say that, you mean approval rating, like likes in terms, you know, is that what you're referencing for YouTube? Or?
Yeah. I mean, the YouTube, I've got a YouTube channel, which I started like 6 weeks ago. It's 10,000 people on there. And the first episodes had 140,000, I think, on my channel alone. And Charlie's got 105,000 on his. And then we're working because it's for free. People use it and put it on the channels, and you know, actually now some people send it back to me and said, "Moin, have you seen this? This guy looks, you know, he looks just like you. Is this you?" Yeah. So we don't actually know, but I can tell you this: that I never had Facebook and I never had Twitter before this, and you know, all day long I've got maybe 1,000 messages a day. They ask a lot of the same questions, but most of it is, thank you so much for what you're doing. You and your team are amazing. We love the programs. It's, 96% of people go out of the way to send what Greg coined the word, called them love bombs. And some of the messages are, you know, it's emotional. I do get choked up. You know, I have shed tears reading some of these heartfelt messages from all over the world. You know, North America is the biggest. So North and South America, Europe, the UK, and all over, because I speak Portuguese, Spanish, German, and Dutch, and English. So I speak 5 languages. So I get them in all these different languages. But Central America, I mean, again, Colombia right now, I don't know if you know this, guys, but Colombia's been in quarantine since March. It's now month 7. They're allowed out 3 days of the week, and they're not allowed out any time during the weekend whatsoever. I mean, that's all down to the corruption of the country because, you know, they're obviously making a lot of arrests. But those poor guys, those poor people, who work from day to day. They don't work from month to month. They work from day to day. They live on what they earn that day and buy rice and vegetables with it. So they're only allowed to work 3 days a week, but yet the people that they pay the rent to are banging on the door saying, pay me. So, I mean, it's terrible what they're going through. Argentina's another struggling country. So for us to give this message of hope and peace and fight on and, you know, don't worry, help is coming, and open up your hearts to change. This is why we did it for free. Why I paid for it, because I want everybody to know this message that Greg told me first, and I felt it was true. And this is why we did the programs, to get everybody on the same message, to understand what's coming, you know? There we are.
You're really doing such a great service. Like, thank you. I mean, just from Arai and I, and especially, you know, all these people who are reaching out to you. The fact that you're, you know, for not caring about the payment, and you're just trying to get this story out to the people because you realize the amount of strength that it has to bring to individuals' lives. It's really it's such an honor even talking to you. It's
no, shut up. It's not without a beard. I'm actually, you know, I'll tell you something interesting. I'm not allowed in the USA. I have a lifetime ban from the US.
Yes, why? Why?
I'm a threat to the safety and the security of the United States, and they didn't officially deport me, but they put me on a flight in LAX after they detained me for 5 weeks illegally, and sent me back and said, you know, at least 10 years. I don't even know.
When was this?
The great opportunity for Greg to prove his validity is, you know, he needs to call Trump or the general and get that overturned, and then
I'm sure it'll happen.
Just by being in the United States, you can just do one of these to us.
I'm not that concerned about it, you know. It's fine. I'm sure it'll sort itself out. I mean, I'm not in a hurry to get back, to be honest. I've got too much going on. But
well, right now,
it's quite funny.
You probably don't know this, David, but my wife and I, we were living in San Diego legally the last 5-ish years.
Yeah.
We had 2 daughters there. We meditate. So the particular city that we were living in, Encinitas, is where there's a lot of teachings for the spiritual path that we follow.
Which city?
Encinitas.
And so I was living underneath you. I was living in Poway.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Very cool. Yeah. We were right there for Yogananda's thing. You know, he's got that temple on the water. And so we were down there, and we just saw the circumstances that were taking place so much. So we're not American. Our daughters are, but, you know, we're not sure where we stand legally in the event of these riots, or, you know, unfortunately, worst case scenario, maybe a civil war. So we got out as well, and we didn't want to do that. We have a beautiful home there, beautiful community of friends. We absolutely love everything that the United States stands for. And unfortunately, it's, you know, we would have been considered liberal or more like Democratic voters here in Canada in the past. But it's really blatantly horrible how what I've observed is that the media has weaponized their messaging to divide, to cause chaos and fear divisions amongst society in as many classes as they can, whether it's ethnic, you know, it's race against another race, if it's, you know, one side against the other, if it's, you know, the different classes of economic. It's a really sad situation that it's come down to. But I think the one thing that we're sharing here that I want to take out of your message in general, David, and the work that you're doing for humanity is, it does appear as if there could very well be an uprising to empower humanity, a takeover of bad to good. A lot of people in different positions throughout the world, it seems like, are coming into power. You know, if good people aren't coming into power, it definitely looks like previous people who definitely appear to have been bad are coming out of power. That is definitely happening. And we really appreciate having you here on the show, because this is what it's all about. It's about informing the public as quickly as possible with real-time information where they can do their own research and find out for themselves. And at Conscious Vitality, it's about being aware of what might be happening that might not feel good to focus on, but more importantly, empowering ourselves with the message of empowerment and positivity for what we can do now to create a world, you know, essentially of our dreams for all of humanity for the future. And it sounds like a new king that would be for the benefit of humanity would definitely be a good next step for us to take if that were the case.
Yeah, you know, the thing is with Greg is he's got exactly the right attitude. People say to me, is he the Antichrist? I mean, if you met the guy, he's like a cuddly teddy bear, you know. He's just such a sweet guy and humble, and you know, he does strange things that you wouldn't expect. Like if there's food on the table, he'll offer it to me. And if you want another, there's a bit left, you have that one. You have this last bit of wine, I'll go and get another bottle. His manners are very nice, and he's very polite. But I think there's 120 something countries in the Commonwealth. So once he gets that document or that stamp or whatever you need for the power, I mean, I can see him straight away saying, right, I mean, South Africa's in a terrible mess. You know, the white farmers being butchered down there. It's so corrupt, it's ridiculous. I'm involved in the group in South Africa. I mean, there's 100 countries like that need desperately, and Canada's a big one too. You know, there's a lot of people from Canada saying, you got to help us. I'm saying, I can only do so much. I can only get the information out. I can offer you inside information. And I send people voice messages all the time, total strangers. And I say, listen, I'm going to take the time to send you a voice message because you've written to me, and I'm driving, so I can't write back, but there you go. But 120 odd countries that Greg can change within weeks. It's such a great opportunity. He's not interested in, you know, palaces and cars and jets and yachts. He says, nah, I'm not interested in all that. He says, you can only sleep in one bed. You know, you can only put, you know, one pair of trousers on a day, more or less. So he's going to do a great job. And I really do feel there's something in this story, because if it doesn't happen now, it might be a couple of years. But here's the other thing. We never finished off about the royal family. If William is the son of one, did you know that? He told me that Prince William is really the son of Juan Carlos, the opposed king that's now disappeared. So Harry is no more involved in the lineage because he took himself out, but he was never royal anyway because he's the son of somebody else. But Greg also disclosed that Prince William is the son of Juan Carlos of Spain. So right now there aren't any heirs to the United Kingdom. So who's going to take over? Who is the person that's going to take over? Because Prince Charles has never been acknowledged as going to do it. And I know he won't. And then Edward's out of the running and now they're trying to get somebody else in, but there isn't anybody else for the job. It's a bit like who's going to be running against Trump when it comes to the debates, because that's something I'm looking forward to, you know. Keep going back to Trump for some reason. It's not deliberate.
I can't imagine it's going to happen. You know, like if it's a little bit insane. Don't get me wrong, Trump makes mistakes as well. Joe Biden. So when my wife and I were running our pharmaceutical group in Brazil, we were using a raw, whole organic form of CBD, which was right from the hemp plant. And we were helping studies that focused on dementia, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, and mostly epilepsy in Sao Paulo in Brazil, the University of Sao Paulo. And in our dementia studies, we observed patients that had it. And the University of Sao Paulo, they put out a national news piece on the biggest program throughout all of Brazil. They actually, very early stage, too early for my liking, they declared it a cure for dementia. But we had a chance to observe what a lot of people go through when they have dementia. And I'm not a medical physician, but I would definitely say that Joe Biden is, unfortunately, he's demonstrating really clear signs of some mental dissolving there. It could very well be dementia. I'm not a physician. I think someone who specializes in that area should look at it, but he definitely has a lot of characteristics that I observed in patients that were doing these studies that did have dementia, unfortunately. So
are you going to send them some of your product and say,
I would love to. You know,
Dear Joe, I'm hereby enclosing. Good luck with the election.
Unfortunately, our product works so well, I'm not sure I want to give him that advantage right now because I'm not sure I support exactly underlying. No, but for all of humanity, we would like to get it out there. That'd be hilarious. We will send you some of our Terra XR, David, if we can make it over there into Spain. I have no idea what the legalities there are in Spain.
I don't know, but I'll find out. I know always welcome anything like that. I mean, I'm very I go to the gym 6 days a week, an hour and a half every morning with Lee. I do, I'm 49 and I do 10 rounds of boxing. So 10 2-minute rounds and then a minute in between break. And then we hit the gym for another 40 minutes, one body part, 5-6 days a week with Lee Dawson, who's a warrior of a man. And we take these supplements that we've very lucky enough. There's a female specialist here called Verlist as a company, and she's the only one who's got 2 PhDs in microbiology? I can't remember, but she makes these amazing supplements that you feel great on. We've got the king on them now as well. He says, man, these things are great. So yeah, anything like that, especially if it's free. Let me tell you one other coincidence, guys. It's a great story where you keep mentioning the Great Awakening, but this word the word that we call the campaign Aranga. Yeah, you've seen it. Mm-hmm. So I'm in the kitchen with Greg. It's 3 a.m, second day. And I said, there's 2 really good stories I want to tell you before we go, but you have to hear these. I'm sorry to keep you from your...
No, please.
Is it lunchtime or is the pubs open?
We've got coffee.
There's 2 really weird stories, okay? So the second night, I talked to Greg, and I said, listen, we need a word for this campaign that cannot be translated in any language. We need it to be going international, and when you hear it, you know exactly where it is. So we were talking about various different things, and I'm standing there, just me and him, and we were both in that zone, all quiet and concentrated. I said, what about something in the Maori language? And he just immediately said, Aranga. And I said, everybody heard it, and we're in this huge kitchen in this country mansion, middle of the English countryside. The hairs of my hands all stood up. I said, oh, I said, what does that mean? He said, the awakening. He says, it actually means resurrection or the awakening. I said, man, that's it. You cannot change that into anything. It'll be Aranga in French or Japanese or whatever. It's always Aranga. I said, that's what we're going to call it. So that night, later on, he told me about his initiation into the mysteries, into the Egyptian mysteries. And he was 18 years old when Anubis came to him and started transmitting all these ancient symbols in gold. And he said he went to bed that night, and it's called body jumping. Basically, Anubis forces his way in and forces your soul out. And your soul gets back up and says, hey, who do you think you're pushing? And then you jump back in your own body. And he goes on 3 times. And 1 in 50 people survive this initiation of Anubis, because he's actually the highest representation of one of the most powerful gods in ancient Egypt. And this ties into the Portuguese episode as well, which you'll get to. But he told me this story, and I was like, I went to Egypt 3 years ago. I was pulled to Egypt, and I started in Cairo. I was everywhere. And it was about 1.5 years after the revolution. And I was basically paying everybody I could. I went to the pyramid outside. It's called Saqqara. It's the oldest one. And the guy said, I was there 7 a.m. He said, what do you want to go see? You want to go see Ramses I, Ramses II, Ramses III? I said, what about Ramses' Revenge? It sounds like movies. So I said, look, man, just give me all the tickets. So he said, you want to see everything? So I took all the tickets. And then I gave another guy about $10, and he showed me every single tomb that the British archaeologists that were excavating there had left, and what the Egyptians were doing. They kept expecting them to come back in. So they were picking up their tools, cleaning them, and putting them back exactly. So I was walking over all these ancient digs, and I saw stuff that no tourist would. And I learned so much about Egypt. So when he started talking about Anubis, I knew exactly what he was talking about. And then that night, I went to bed, and that night something was trying to pull me out. So he told me such a heavy story, because what happens with Anubis is when you die, you lose all body controls of all your fluids, of all your, that's what dead people do. And we had these huge, beautiful beds. It's like these beds that you get in the W hotels in America, like super, like, oh my God. So all white. I said, oh my God, if Anubis is coming to try to communicate with me tonight, I cannot let this happen in this bed because I'll be mortified, right? So it was a feeling of something pushing on my chest, but also pulling out me as well. So I kept going, waking myself up, and I stayed awake all night. But whatever the energy was, it managed to communicate symbols to me. And this is why I thought it was Anubis. It showed me a line that's not quite straight. It showed me a circle, and it showed me a very high mountain. Just 2 lines up, like an upside down V. And I kept saying them over and over and over again. So in the morning I got up and I said, Greg, mate, I said, what the, did you call him? Would you like ringing an Uber saying, come on, Mahoney, he's waiting for you, it's a joke? He said, no, what are you talking about? Because I mean, I was very like, you know, that was a really, really deep, profound, I've had a few spiritual experiences, but this was a really profound one, the most profound I've had today. So 2 days after that, we went to the house, we changed locations because our security became compromised. They found out where we were, and somebody sent a cake to the house saying, with a king on it. So somebody somewhere found out we were filming in this house, and they got a cake, and we'll say, oh, look at this delicious cake. I was saying, who's going to test eat? You have a piece, you eat it first, right? We actually did eat it. It was fine in the end, but we moved location in a bit of a panic. And when we got to the next house, which you'll see at the end of episode 1, I walked into this garden, and it was all beautiful pyramid bushes. And then I said, what's down there? And there was a very high grass. You can see it from the drone shot. Very high grass with a path cut in the middle, which was slightly, wasn't straight, slightly off, like 3 football lengths. And at the end of that path, there was a stone circle with the same stones that are made in Stonehenge. I was like, holy shit. This is what I saw in my dream. I saw the circle, the line, and the pyramid. And then I said, what does that mean, Greg? He said, well, the circle is where we are in our life right now. We're going around in a circle. Same old, same old. He said, the line, because it's not straight, is the path. He said, well, it's never going to be straight. There's always, you know, a few bumps in the road. And then the shape like that represents the ascension that we all have to make when we get to, you know, the next level. I was like, holy shit, man, that's what I saw. And then we put this on the bottom of the Oranga campaign, these symbols. I'm going to tweak that because we did it in such a rush. It's not great graphics wise. But then when I said, listen, Greg, I said, the great thing about Oranga, look at it. It's got 3 mountains in it. And then we discovered that it fits right into Donald Trump's signature, which is what we put at the end of episode 2.
Yeah, we saw
so
that.
I said, look at that, man. It's 3 mountains, 3 ascension humps, and they both fit in together. I was like, how mental is that? We came up with that word. It just came to us. We've got the mountains and the pyramids there. Spiritually, and this is the stuff with Greg, that stuff happens all the time. Mm-hmm. So again, you know, you can say, well, come on, Mahoney, you exaggerate, you know, it's just, you know, you probably didn't see it. It's, you know, deja vu, maybe you think you saw it, but I'm telling you guys, that night, I have to say I was very concerned about when I was going to come back. I could feel myself being pulled out. There was some energy there. And between me and you, my psychic abilities have gone through the roof since I met Greg. You know, I have things communicating with me every night for what I should do and what I shouldn't do. The intuitive powers I've developed since meeting him on signs and signals and decoding. I mean, it's mental. So there you go. There's my 2 amazing stories. I don't know how you're going to edit that, but good luck.
We're probably not going to edit it at all. We're going to leave it right in.
Sorry to interrupt. Yeah. Where we were in England, the stone circle at the end, they were communicating with extraterrestrials while we were there that night because they came down the night. What's that American guy who's off? He's very fit. He's old and he's bald. I want to say, is it Wilkins or something?
David Wilcock?
Stephen Greer.
What's his name?
Stephen Greer. If he's really fit, he wears glasses.
Yeah.
Stephen Greer.
Yeah, he's his technique about the meditation and communicating.
Yeah,
they were doing that in the garden while we were filming in the daytime. They were doing that, and next day they're all telling us that they had clouds and orbs and energy shooting all around the place. So yeah, I haven't said what you've been talking about ETs, but no, I fully believe in that as well. I know it we're being watched.
Well, the reason I was bringing it up is that in that whole realm, what they believe is that we are already multidimensional.
Yeah.
That's what they believe. We're already multidimensional beings. And interestingly enough, quantum physics has pointed that out, even scientifically. They can measure, the last count is 17 dimensions or beyond. And so what everyone that has claimed to connect with ETs has said that they have the ability to go multidimensional, not just in our physical third dimension. And so the next steps for evolution, which is actually what this series of show is called, it's called Conscious Evolution, the Next Steps for Humanity, that we're doing right now, is predominantly understanding how to tune into greater degrees of telepathy, ultimately our multidimensional selves. And even right now, we're actually running, David, a course shared by a quadruple PhD Russian scientist, which is non-denominational. It's a quantum physics meditation concentration practice for evolving our consciousness into the fourth and fifth dimension. So our whole community is all about awakening telepathy. And I think that that's part of the Great Awakening, is that we're ultimately going to realize that we're more interconnected as humanity, so that we can't be lied to anymore. We've had people here on the show that have told us, guys that have claimed to work with the government and these private military contractors, and they said there's so many control mechanisms that we know about and that we don't know about, like from fluoride in the water to gas being sprayed by cloaked UFOs, that's what they say, in the air. They said that there's so many control mechanisms right now that cover up, that almost mask our own innate ability of telepathy, where we're so interconnected as humanity. When those are removed, people have told us it'll be like we've had an arm that we didn't even know about. It's that real for us. And we'll be kind of shocked, but they won't be able to hide anything from us. They won't be able to commit mass genocide, produce forced false conflicts. They won't be able to traffic kids. They won't be able to blow people up, because we'll quite literally feel it as if our emotion body is being affected. That's how connected we are within humanity.
That's great, isn't it? No, that's great. And actually we haven't, but Greg is super spiritual, man. The half of the conversation we were talking was not about necessarily about, okay, what we're going to talk about tomorrow. It's like, he's a massive can of worms. You ask him this and you ask him that and he throws you this. I'm like, hang on, slow down. Let me get this before we move on there. He's exceptionally, he's the Mike Tyson of the spiritual world, man. The stuff the guy knows. And the dirt he has on famous people and royal family and politicians. You can ask him anything. What did he tell me the other day? Oh, I'm going to film this when it's a little bit darker. The true story of Jack the Ripper. He knows about that.
I've heard
so
about
I'm going to put that whole story down and tell the truth about it. And there was a royal connection.
Well,
that's a great episode. Release that around October, for Halloween.
Well, now it gets very much into being more plausibly believable that there's a royal family connection when everyone's being aware of Pizzagate, adrenochrome, even in the United States.
Yeah, it's true. Joel, you haven't said too much, buddy.
I'm so excited that we get to talk, and we're going to be able to talk a little bit more, because I've got tons of questions, and I'm just so excited to be a part of learning about this King John III story. It's interesting
He's real, man. I'll tell you what, he's real. And I think if you would have asked me this question a year ago when, none of this all started and everything was normal, I would say, come on, man. But now when I'm thinking, all right, the Queen's disappeared, Harry's gone to America, and King Carlos is, it's all fitting into place. So there's definitely something in it. And all I can do is present the evidence and let the story tell itself, really. That's it. Because the more people know about it, it's going to help if we got thousands of people screaming, what about this guy? What about this guy? But I'm really funny about lying. Don't like it. Don't like to lie. You have to remember a lie. So all of my statements and everything I've done on it say, look, this is how it happened. The journalistic integrity that we want to keep up is it's like yourself. And I really like that on IRA when you said that, it's important that people know that you're not doing this for glory. I'm not in it for the glory. I had 2 big feature movies I was about to start before this stuff all happened. And then I thought we're done by episode 3. And then he said, hey, get yourself to Portugal and wait till you see what happens down there. I'm like, Greg, don't ring me anymore. Stop it. I've got a life.